final speaker in this particular session is Allan Savory, distinguished biologist, ecologist, former politician. He was an MP in Zimbabwe before becoming leader of the opposition and then went into exile in the US. He's the founder and president of the Savory Institute, a consultancy. His 2013 TED Talk has had more than 3.4 million views, and it was voted one of the 50 most intriguing TED Talks of all time. Mr. Savory, we're delighted to have you here today.
Thank you. Global desertification and climate change present a greater danger than all the wars ever fought. And as you know, the theme of this conference is time for solutions. And indeed, it is time. I'm going to have to take you right outside your comfort zone in Europe, because this can only be solved globally. For centuries, we've believed that desertification is caused by livestock overgrazing, and our remedy has been to decrease livestock or remove them altogether. Because this belief is so deeply entrenched and ancient, we have never looked any deeper. What we have done repeatedly is to address the symptoms of desertification. So let us remind ourselves, the symptoms of desertification are increasing severity and frequency of droughts and floods, which in turn lead to many of the symptoms that the latest Sustainable Development Goals aim to address. Hunger, poverty, social breakdown, mass emigration to cities and across borders, changing the political face of Europe as it is doing, violence and war. And desertification leads to climate change because as soils become dry and lifeless, they no longer store carbon, but rather release it. One picture makes my point. This land in the United States has had all livestock removed for nearly 100 years. But as you can see, the desertification is as serious as any in the world. So how can livestock have caused that? Our belief, which assumed scientific validity despite no evidence ever, is tragic because only livestock, properly managed, can reverse desertification and regenerate the world's agricultural soils on the scale that is needed to seriously address climate change. Let me explain why only livestock and no other tool available to humans can do what is needed. The smaller green areas you see are humid throughout most of the year, and they are not turning to desert. The browner regions are where desertification is occurring, and that is where the rainfall is seasonal, with humid and then dry or dormant periods, about 2/3 of the world's land. These are regions where grass plants provide the main soil cover and stability for all life. Some are arid, but many of them receive over 1,000 millimeters of rain. By the look of the audience and watching the speakers today, I would guess that 95% of you live in the green zones. Now, in all regions of the world, soil life, plants and animals evolved together. But in the browner regions of the world, this included unimaginable today numbers of large grazing animals and pack hunting predators. And that was before humans exterminated most of them and replaced them with fewer domestic animals. In such environments, when there are not enough grazing animals and enough ruminants to biologically cycle the plant material that is dying every year in the dry or dormant period through the moist rumen of the animal or by trampling it to the ground, then what happens is that the gradual oxidation, a chemical breakdown process, takes place instead of rapid biological decay. Now, oxidizing plants die prematurely, and the grasslands shift to woody vegetation and bare ground, shedding water and drying out. Now perhaps you can understand why, with no grazing animals, in the picture I showed a little earlier, it is turning to desert, undermining centuries of belief and scientific certainty about livestock being the cause. Now, what measures have past civilizations and modern scientists used to address desertification? Frankly, we have tried everything known to mankind and science for centuries. We have used fire. We've used fire to try to get rid of the old material, and still do. But this, instead of maintaining grasslands, was rapid oxidation, polluting the environment and leading to desertification. We have used technology to build contours and swales and to plant trees at enormous cost, as we see here. This is in Israel, in the Negev desert, costing 10,000 euros per hectare and doing nothing to halt the desert in any way while destroying the lives of pastoral people. In the United Arab Emirates, they've spent over $30 billion drip irrigating, desalinating, and planting trees, and the desert is simply marching on. China has spent millions of dollars and man-hours of efforts planting millions of trees, and some days now, up to 250,000 tons of sand are dumped on Beijing, all while destroying pastoral cultures. And we have done the only other thing known to science, which is to wrest the land from human disturbance or to leave it to nature, called conservation or preservation. Now, this is extremely successful in the green regions of the world where humidity is relatively permanent. And when we abandon past civilizations that failed because of their agriculture in those environments, we find them under the recovered biodiversity. Conservation works. But in most of the world, when we abandoned our civilizations in the past and the land rested, it just continued to desertify, and we find our civilizations under desert sands. Now, I hardly need state to you that all of these measures available to science, and there is nothing else, literally, none of them can feed people over the most problematic area of the world, which you see here, where 95% of the ground that is desertifying can only sustain people from livestock. Genuine and permanent solution, I hope you can see, depends entirely on our ability to accept that we do not have another option worldwide, but to change our attitude to domestic ruminants, which livestock are. Desertification is a biological problem, incapable of any other than a biological solution. Now, how can livestock reverse desertification and heal agricultural soils? When I first realized this in the 1960s, that the way pastoralists and ranchers and scientists have always managed livestock around the world leads to desertification in the seasonal environments of the world, I realized we needed an entirely new approach. By the late 1960s, we had developed a highly successful planning process that used livestock to mimic nature and wild herds of old, and while the results were incredibly encouraging and successful, they were inconsistent. Something was still missing because we could not guarantee consistent results. The fault was mine. I had omitted to look at the social, cultural, and economic aspects and nothing short of considering every factor, social, cultural, economic, environmental, could succeed. Consistent success was finally achieved in 1984. There's a slide missing. That was achieved, and it's described in the textbook, Holistic Management, a common sense revolution to restore our environment. And in that, I describe how, helped by hundreds of farmers, pastoralists, ranchers, and scientists, fellow scientists, acting outside of their institutions, we were able to come up with consistent results through a practice that we now call holistic management. Now, management always involves a web of social, cultural, and economic and environmental complexity that simply cannot be ignored, but we do. Holistic management takes this complex web of factors into account by using a single overarching context or reason for all management and actions. A context for management that describes how people desire their lives to be based upon their culture, and the behaviors and the environment that 200, 300, 500 years from now will be sustaining their descendants in the same manner. Conventional management and policy development, on the other hand, reduces this web of complexity to a number of simple contexts for management. Contexts such as meeting a need, a desire, or in the case of policy, always to address a problem. And such reductionist management commonly leads to disappointing results and unintended consequences. So common is that phenomenon that economists refer to the law of unintended consequences. Not being prescriptive, holistic management cannot be subjected to experimental protocol, but the results can be measured and documented and have been for many years. So let me just show you a few results from around the world. This picture is of a farmer, Gabe Brown, in America, integrating livestock with the crops, building soil, mixed crops in 400 millimeters of rain, and now he is matching the yields of any neighbors and building soil rapidly and dramatically. This is a picture taken from a bridge. On one side, looking at land managed holistically, looking the other side of the bridge at conventional management. This is in the Karoo Desert many years ago in southern Africa, and you see the Karoo Desert just turning back to grassland with greatly increased livestock and holistic management. Now, on land in Mexico, I had to mark the hill because the change was so dramatic after shifting to holistic from reductionist management. And then in Zimbabwe, where we have a microcosm of almost all the problems of the world, we've gone through 10 years of below average rainfall or average, and most of this would have been described as terrible drought normally, and we simply cannot keep pace with the production of the land now, with a 400% increase in livestock, plus a great many elephants, buffalo, and many other game. And these are fixed point photographs showing the change on different sites. In each case the same, bare and eroding for over 30 years, no matter how much rain we got, and now all turning to grassland as we manage holistically. On that particular property, we have subjected over 600 sites to extremely high impact from animals, the exact opposite of what we've always believed. Every single site has improved. Not one site has remained the same or become worse. Never have I heard of so much hope for humanity as we are seeing there. Let me conclude. I believe I've offered you a way to begin solving our most pressing problems by managing holistically and by using livestock to heal land while feeding people. This is a way to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, which, if the management does not change, I believe will fare no better than all previous endeavors, past efforts to unite around such important initiatives. Seeking solutions, as is the aim of this conference, I trust you will follow up on what I've been able to share in such a short talk. In the meantime, sorry, there is the book. They got changed. In the meantime, to help speed the process, the Savory Institute, of which I'm a co-founder, plans to influence up to 1 billion acres by 2025. We're already influencing millions of acres on 6 continents through locally led and managed holistic management hubs. Some are led by entrepreneurs, some by farmers, some by NGOs, and we even have the first university-led hub now, Michigan State in the United States. Currently, we have about 30 of these hubs around the world and 4 hubs in Europe, in Sweden, Spain, Turkey, and the UK. And I see some of the leaders of those hubs are in the audience today. No person or organization is to blame for the centuries of failures due to reductionist management and rejection of livestock. We simply did not know how reductionist even our most sophisticated scientific management was. But now we do know, and we know what we must do to begin to tackle the cause of desertification rather than its many symptoms. And if we can heed this, I believe the present Sustainable Development Goals can be made more successful, and we can work together as Team Humanity to do that. I believe our younger generations will then have a real hope for the future, and I invite you to join us. Thank you.